Welcome back to Keeks Custom Builds. Today we have a super cool project for you guys. Not really super cool for the customer, but this is going to make an excellent video. So here is something that I haven't seen and I didn't know that they even made. So it's a Polaris XP1000 supercharged model, which I think is really cool, but yeah, it also comes with some drawbacks, which you're going to find out about here pretty quick. Anyway, this is what it looks like. You have your supercharger, which is a Vortec type, and also a boost reference line, I'm assuming, right there next to the exhaust. But anyway, this isn't really causing the problem directly. Also have a exhaust on it with, it looks like stepped headers. I'm not really sure, but I think this is pretty cool because it's got a custom cast housing and everything to route that supercharger up and out of the way and make it look super clean. And coming around here, everything looks fairly factory. Of course, you have your charge tube here and here, but now for the problem. So up here you can see we have an intercooler with a very small push fan, I believe, spaced off of the oil cooler. And this is going to be a severe problem, especially if you have a supercharged car like this one, because when you have a back window, no airflow through the intercooler, and then you just end up with absolutely roaching hot or scorching hot temperatures getting straight into your engine, which also has 11:1 compression. And you can't really do that, especially with super hot charge air, which brings us to the main problem here. You can see that there's a whole bunch of blow-by coming from around the gasket for the valve cover, and I already know why this is. But yesterday we took it all apart and tested it. This cylinder right here, close to the supercharger, is perfectly fine at 140 psi compression. This one right here had 25 psi, which is absolutely terrible. We pulled this cam out, made sure the valves were completely closed, and checked it again. We have 30% with the cylinder leak down tester, which you need around 90 for the engine to be healthy, so 30% kept in the cylinder is absolutely bad. We have 70% leakage. So we checked everything. The intake valve leaks, but just barely, and where all the air is coming out is from the bottom end. So it's just blowing up all through here, which would cause blow-by out through the gasket and through every single port that isn't completely sealed, which means we have a broken piston or the rings are gone or something like that. Because you can see around here, before we took the heat shield off, everything was just absolutely coated with this black stuff that was leaking out from around the valve cover gasket there. So we have a pretty good idea that the piston is broken, rings are gone, or the piston is melted. So this thing does currently still run just on one cylinder, but with that out of the way, we're going to need to get this entire rear section off and the engine pulled to really diagnose anything any further. So if you guys want to stick around, hopefully the customer has us build him a low compression engine and build him a little bit better intercooler setup. Anyway, with all that out of the way, I'm going to start tearing this whole thing down. This is not going to be a really in-depth showing you exactly how to take this apart. It's just going to be showing you how to get the right idea on where to build this engine and how to build this car. Well, I just finished getting the bed off, and that was way more work than it needed to be. It could have been just like the previous generations where the bed pops out 4 bolts around the edge right here, and then you're able to get at the engine. But instead, the Polaris engineers decided that they hated us and did this. So, with everything off, you can see that you're able to get to the engine fairly well. Everything is super dirty. There's some more stuff I'm starting to see. This clamp is loose right there. I'm sure I'm gonna find more more stuff like that. So we're gonna push it outside probably, cover everything up, and pressure wash it so that everything is nice and clean, and then we'll be able to pull it out. All right, so now I found some more things that were wrong with this. We have an O2 sensor port that was just left open, which is why everything was covered in this black stuff. It was just blasting on this side the entire time. Also, the clamp right here for the charge pipe going into the intake was also loose, not this loose. I tried to get it off. And probably the most obvious part is this boot right here. It is ripped all the way through. So that would definitely be a big issue. So possibly the heat roasted the O2 wires and it didn't read correctly and may have caused engine damage. But definitely we have a burned piston or burned valves. Because if you can see in here, we got some spit up from cylinder number 1 and nothing from number 2. So definitely some stuff going on inside this engine. I'll pick the camera back up once we have the head off. We're not pulling the engine yet until we check everything. So we're going to pull the head off and then I'll pick the camera back up and we'll see what kind of damage we have going on there. Now I got the head off and turned it over a little bit. As you can see, the walls are still really smooth. And maybe there's a couple little ribs right here at the top, but other than that, it all looks perfectly fine. I don't know, maybe the rings are broken in there or something. Rings are worn out. I don't know. Something weird's going on. And over here on the head, I haven't flipped this over and looked at it yet. So let's check it out. The head also looks okay. So I'm not really sure what's going on here. We're gonna have to check this out a little bit further. To do the full rebuild on this like we're going to, we need to pull off the supercharger assembly. And you can see very clearly that there's a severe oil leak in here. And that's the tray there. It's all filled up. So I went and took this off, oil dumped everywhere, and I immediately knew that was a problem because this is a serpentine belt that runs through here to run the supercharger. After I got it cleaned up, all the oil that was draining out cleaned up, I went and turned the supercharger and I was able to turn it with the belt still on it and the crank did not spin. So that's how loose it was. The idlers and adjusters are all fine. They spin fine and they were still where they were supposed to be. Next, we took off the belt and the supercharger feels super gritty. Not good at all. So hopefully the oil was from the engine, maybe the blow-by pushing everything out through the seal right here, but most likely it was in fact leaking from the supercharger, which would be really bad. So any way to get this apart, we have to take this off of here and then we'll pull apart the supercharger possibly, maybe look through a few ports and check if it's actually ruined or not. So now with that, I'm gonna finish getting all these guys out and pulling this off. All right, now I'm back with a whole bunch of new parts to rebuild this engine back to the correct way for a supercharged or turbocharged application. But first, I'm sure you guys are gonna wanna know why this engine failed or why the compression was so low. So on cylinder number 1, which is the driver's side, you can see the ring gap here is, I'd say probably an 1/8 inch or, yeah, probably an 1/8 inch gap right there, which is way too much. And the theory on why this happened is that boot was ripped on this, the intake boot was ripped for this cylinder. So maybe dirt was going in there or there wasn't enough boost reaching it and it was overfueling, causing the fuel to wash the walls out on the cylinder and cause extreme premature wear. So that's basically what happened here, and it's not fixable. So here we have new cylinder walls. These are a factory type Polaris 1000 XP naturally aspirated cylinder jug wall, whatever you want to call it. Next, we have some CP Carrillo race pistons that are low compression. So you can see they're dipped in the middle there, have cutouts for the valves, and then you have some rings that go with it. You can see this is what the correct ring gap would be for a factory engine, around 10 to 12 thousandths, and you can see how big that one is. So we're also going to have to use a ring grinder to grind these rings to the correct gap for boosted application. So now over here at the box of goodies is your Carrillo racing pistons, billet timing chain tensioner, and then we got all new valves, which are racing valves for cylinder number 1, because we weren't sure if those valves would have been damaged. Also have titanium head studs for all that gripping power. So basically, we're going to be taking this from not boostable at all to boostable, and then we're also going to be able to overdrive the supercharger if that's what he wants at a later date. So this can handle a lot more boost than what it's at right now if he decides to later on have us overdrive it. Well, the issues keep emerging on this thing as we put it together. So everything is on it supercharger wise. All the oil lines and air lines are routed, so everything's where it's supposed to be. You can see we have the belt setting up here because as I was putting it on, I noticed this bolt is loose and this one's missing, and that holds the engine and transmission from moving against each other and would cause belt failure if they were loose. So this isn't really that much of a uncommon thing to see here. So I went over to the other side, and over here you can see this bolt is hanging out, which still isn't that unusual. This one's a little bit tight, but I went to run this in after putting on our clutch alignment tool, and you can see this goes all the way in and out. There's supposed to be threads in this block between the engine and transmission, and they are no longer available. So this has been like this for quite a while. I don't know how this happened. This thing only has 1,600 miles on it and is practically brand new. So that means the engine and the transmission is going to have to come out, which means everything in the rear end has to come apart too. Well, now we have the transmission out and a new engine mount in place, a new used one. Of course, as is usual with this build, it's fighting us every single step of the way. So that axle pulled out of the CV, so we're gonna have to put that back together. Once it's back in here, everything is pulled apart. So now I'm gonna be setting that transmission back in there and bolting it all back up. All right, now it's all back together and running excellent. So all the coolant is bled off, which is an absolute pain with these under the hood there. If you know, you know. And we did have a few problems with the supercharger, so we installed everything. We stayed super late one night and got everything done. The customer helped us put everything together. He was supposed to pick it up right then. But when we went to start it, once everything was together, the supercharger locked up and would not spin anymore. So we had already taken it apart and checked it all out, and it looked okay. These superchargers are not like your typical Vortex superchargers. These are Rotex, which is a big difference. These have a planetary roller system that rotate around each other. It's super strange design. I personally don't really like it, along with my dad. He doesn't like it either, but it does work supposedly a whole lot more efficient than your typical Vortex. Anyway, with that said, it locked up and we called it a night because pulling it all apart, we thought the supercharger was going to be garbage. Anyway, we pulled it back off there, cleaned it all up again, put it back on there, and it worked perfectly. We primed out the system again, and then also attached a drill to the pulley with the belt off and waited for the oil to pump out up here in the cooler, and then also to pump back into the reservoir in there. So we made sure like it was super primed, if that's a thing. And we started it up. It ran absolutely perfect, and this exhaust is super loud and pretty annoying. So if you do end up doing this, make sure that you install a baffled muffler, not just a glass pack, because those are really annoying and you can't hear anything while driving this. So it's all back together and looking good. So now for the things that you're going to need to convert it, you already seen this, but here's a part number. That's the part number there. These are forged 9.5 to 1 compression pistons, which makes it so that you can actually run boost on these engines without blowing it up like it did the first time, or worse, because the supercharger locked up the first time and probably saved the engine from actually doing some real damage in there. So these lower the compression and make it so that if you accidentally run bad fuel in it, or if your fuel turns bad, it won't blow up your engine. Also makes it last a lot longer. So these are just valves. These are optional, but when we rebuilt it, we didn't want the old valves to break off in there since they had been damaged slightly. So you don't have to use this exact brand, but it's Kibblewhite racing valves. So we did a full new set of them, so 8 valves. And that's pretty much the only thing that you need to convert your engine to forced induction. So we also did all new gaskets. Of course, you want to do that so that your engine doesn't end up failing from a head gasket leak or something like that. So basically that's pretty much it. And now a few tips to get your engine all put together with the new parts in it. It's probably just going to be easier to have it sent off unless you are experienced in working on these engines. These are not like your typical small block Chevys or Fords or anything like that. These engines are a lot more finicky to put together and work on. So if you are experienced and you're planning on doing this, it is possible to change out the pistons with the engine still in here. It's just an absolute pain, as you guys saw. And then it's even harder to fit the new rings into the cylinder sleeves because they try to fall out or stick out. And it's just really, really tight in there. So if you guys are experienced enough, it is possible to do it with the engine still in here. But if you're not, then I would recommend having it sent off, because you do not want this to get messed up, especially since you just dropped $1,500 to $1,800 in new parts into your engine. So I didn't get to film as much of the process as I wanted to, but I tried my best, guys. This is a really tight deadline that we're already pushed past a little bit. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to like the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's a huge help. Thank you guys for watching. Happy 4th of July. Keeg out.